All right, Alexander, let's do an update as to what's going on in Ukraine. Let's also talk about Turkey and Russia, Erdogan and Putin, and NATO and what's going on there, Finland, Sweden, the vote that's coming up in a few weeks, actually, with regards to Finland and Sweden and NATO. And Turkey is really digging in, and they're standing firm and saying, we're not going to give you our yes vote unless you give us A, B, C, and D. And we also have a very bad situation for the Ukraine military and for the Zelensky regime in Ukraine. Let me just read you one really quick headline from Jacob Dreisen. And it's the first sentence of a really big headline, but it looks like this is big news coming from the Dreisen report. Svatogorsk, last major milestone towards Russian southward advance on Slavyansk, abandoned by Ukrainian forces. Huge sea change in the last 24 hours in Ukrainian war outlook and propaganda. Mood turns negative. And I mean, I think everyone understands the implications there with an advance towards Slavyansk. We've been saying that we're entering the final stages of the Battle of Donbass, and I believe that the final act will be in and around Slavyansk, Severodonetsk, and then Slavyansk, and these areas. That'll be the final act of phase two. What do you make of these two big stories?
I completely agree with Jacob Dreisen's analysis. Can I just say Sviatogorsk is an important city. It was important strategically because, as Jacob Dreisen correctly says, it's on the way to Slavyansk. It's the sign that Slavyansk is now about to be surrounded. The Arestovich, who is Zelensky's press spokesman and chief propagandist, now says that the siege of Slavyansk is about to begin. So, he's admitting it. I think the other important thing to say about the Battle of Sviatogorsk is that there wasn't really a battle in Sviatogorsk. It was a place you'd have expected the Ukrainians to want to dig in to hold. And instead, once more, the Russians captured it very, very quickly. There wasn't very much fighting there. And there was some concern that the Ukrainians would then pull back and try and hold a monastery. There's a very, very famous Russian Orthodox, I stress Russian Orthodox monastery. The monks there accept the authority of the Patriarch of Moscow near Sviatogorsk. And in the event, they left that too. So they were pushed back very fast from Sviatogorsk. It seems that the Russians have crossed the Seversky Donetsk river. We've been hearing a lot about this, and it's this river which seems to wind through these battlefields has been an obstacle to the Russians in various places. But it seems that they're now crossing the Seversky Donetsk river. I've also got reports, by the way, that because of the dry weather, the water levels in this river have now fallen. So it's possible to wade across it. You don't actually need to build pontoon bridges. So it's no longer quite the obstacle that it was because, we're now in summer. And that means, that the water levels have fallen. I mean, I'm not a geographer. I don't have the exact details of this. But it does look as if we're looking at a military collapse in northern Donbass. I mean, ever since the fall of Popasnaya about a month ago, we've seen the tempo of Russian advances steadily grinding upward. And we've also seen the tempo of Ukrainian losses growing. So first there was the collapse in Liman. Now there's been the collapse in Sviatogorsk. There was another failure in another town, Svetlodarsk. And it looks, and of course, that Ukrainian counteroffensive in Severodonetsk that we were hearing so much about 2 or 3 days ago, it turns out was a mirage. Even the Ukrainians are now accepting that the Russians are in full control of that entirety of Severodonetsk, apart from the industrial zone. So it looks as if the whole of the northern Donbass front is disintegrating. Now, can I say, and this comes back to an issue that has been much talked about. There was, it seems to me, an alternative, far more rational strategy for the Ukrainians to have followed, which is to carry out some kind of fighting retreat from the Donbass and do what people like Scott Ritter has suggested, build up their reserves in western or central Ukraine, reconstitute their army there, and then try and hold a line maybe on the Dnieper. It seems instead what they've been doing is they've been trying to fight for every inch of ground in Donbass, and they've been throwing all their reserves into this battle, where instead of being built up further west, they've all been thrown into the battle and have been destroyed one by one. So not only does it look as if they're about to lose the battle of the Donbass, but frankly, once they're defeated in Donbass, it's looking increasingly likely that they will have lost the whole war, because the better part of their army will have been destroyed. The last part is more my assessment than others, but that's how it's increasingly looking to me.
Yeah, before we get to Turkey and Russia, that's because for the Zelensky regime, and actually even the United States and the EU, it's not so much about making moves to fight another day. It's more about the fact that we're not able to swallow a defeat, and they couldn't absorb the optics of a defeat in the Donbass, and then to say, okay, well, we've been defeated there, but we're going to live to fight another day. We're going to reconstitute our forces. We're going to concentrate on the West and regroup. For them, it's a 24-hour news cycle. They have to present to the public, to the media, that they're winning on all fronts, and they're marching on Moscow, and Russia is collapsing, and Putin is collapsing, and everything is 50 generals are dying on the battlefield, and Russia's a big joke. For them, it's that 24-hour news cycle narrative, instead of planning and strategizing and saying, look, we're not doing well there, we're not going to win there, but let's focus on this and that. They can't do it. And it's not even, and I don't want to blame the Zelensky regime either. This is DC and Brussels. They can't swallow the defeat.
No,
even a temporary defeat. I'm not saying it was going to be temporary, but even a defeat in the Donbass, for example, they said, no way, we're not going to go to the media and say we've lost the Donbass just yet. Let's figure out excuses. Let's try to water it down. Let's memory hole it. Let's do whatever we can. But we're not going to go to the media and say we lost here. Now we're going to refocus on something else. They can't do it.
You're absolutely right. And contrast that with the Russian media strategy, which is to say nothing, hardly anything. I mean, Russian media, Russian accounts of the fighting have been thin. I mean, I'm talking about the government media, the government spokesman. I mean,
the Ministry of Defense.
The Ministry of Defense. They say practically nothing. And that way they keep all their options open, and they have the greatest degree of flexibility in what to do. So, they probe here and it doesn't quite work. So, they tried to cross the Seversky Donetsk River earlier and that didn't quite work. And then they focus on Popasnaya, and then they break through in Popasnaya, and then they probe in one place, they probe in another, they retreat a little here, they advance a little there, until they get their breakthrough and until they get the results they want. So, as you're absolutely right, the one fights war and the other fights information war. And when you're actually fighting in a real war, well, it's not difficult to guess who's going to win.
All right. Turkey and Russia, another type of war. I guess that's not looking good for NATO and for the collective West. Once again, it really amazes me that when they started up this whole Finland, Sweden, NATO thing, they didn't think about all the implications with regards to other NATO member states, and specifically Turkey. They just rushed it through again. They wanted the media win. They wanted to get in front of the podium, Stoltenberg, and to say, tomorrow Finland and Sweden are joining NATO. You see, NATO is more united than ever, and we are fighting Putin. Putin's strategy has failed. Instead of breaking NATO apart, NATO is now more united, and it's going to be bigger as well than when the war started. You see, Putin, you failed. They went for the media spin and the media win, but it's turned into a complete freaking debacle.
Absolutely. Now, of course, this all turns on Erdogan, and Erdogan is a difficult person to read at the best of times, and it could be that he's going to change his position from one day to the next. But we're now getting Chinese commentaries, and the Chinese are particularly well informed, apparently, about the thinking in Ankara. And I think we must take this seriously. And the Chinese are now saying that Erdogan is not going to shift on Finland and Sweden. His demands have not been even considered. The Americans and NATO thought he was bluffing. He wasn't bluffing. And the result is he's now hardened his position to the point where he's now apparently telling Stockholm and Helsinki that they can forget about joining NATO, that he's not going to prove it. It's not going to happen. And the Chinese are also saying that Erdogan has been looking at the situation. I mean, he's got a certain strategic gift. I mean, unquestionably he does. He's looking at the situation. He's looking at the situation in Ukraine, which, remember, he had at one point in time thought he could strike a balance between Ukraine and Russia. He now realizes that Russia is going to win and win conclusively. He's looking at the EU and the fact that it's all over the place, and he never liked them anyway. He is looking at the Biden administration, and he never liked them very much. And he's now also seen how utterly incompetent and chaotic they are. And being Erdogan, he's decided that he wants to be with the winning side, and he's assessed that that winning side is Russia. And so he's now quietly working with Putin, and the two of them still hold their regular telephone conversations. And apparently Erdogan has told Putin that he's going to block Finland and Sweden's accession to NATO. He's apparently said that. I don't know whether that's true, but that's what I'm hearing. But that's what the Chinese are saying. And it seems also that the Turks have decided that they're going to move further and faster in realigning their economies with the Eurasian economies and with Russia. So the Turks, a couple of weeks ago, did a big economic deal with the Russians whereby they will replace a lot of the light consumer goods and components that the Russians themselves don't make. You know, the kind of things like buttons for clothes. I mean, Russia makes most of its clothes, but they actually imported buttons from the EU. It's a small thing. They could do it themselves, but they've turned to Turkey for that kind of thing instead, for a lot of products, and Turkey is good at making that kind of thing. So that will help the Turkish economy. It'll link it to the Russia's economy looks stable. Turkey's hasn't been. It's going to stabilize Turkey. He's also now looking at the mess the Europeans have made of their energy policies. He's seen how India is now acting as a middleman for Russian oil, which is being exported by India after it's refined to the EU and to the United States. Erdogan wants apparently a share in that. He also is now positioning Turkey to be the big hub for Russian gas. So Russian gas goes to Turkey, and then it's mixed up, and then it's, you know, with Azerbaijan and Kazakh gas, and so Turkey's going to be the big transit state ultimately for Russian gas to southern Europe, and on top of all of that, there's going to be a whole host of other economic and other agreements and financial agreements. The Mir card is going to be accepted in. This is Russia's alternative to MasterCard and Visa, is now going to be accepted in Turkey in the summer. And that's apparently being brought forward. And all kinds of economic and trade agreements are in the pipeline between Turkey and Russia. And there's a talk of a summit meeting between Putin and Erdogan to basically seal all these deals. So that's where it's heading. And by the way, he's also made it absolutely clear, no NATO warships in the Black Sea. the straits remain closed, and he's working with Putin, and there's been a discussion about this, on unblocking Ukrainian grain exports. They can travel, if not through Odessa, through the ports, in the Sea of Azov, Berdyansk and Mariupol, now both under Russian control, and that the Turks and the Russians will work together with the Ukrainians, presumably, to export that grain. So it's all coming together with Turkey and Russia, and there is no mechanism to expel a country from NATO. So it's beginning to look increasingly as if the Turks, having decided from which direction the wind is blowing, that they're going to tilt their sails to the prevailing wind, and at the same time, changing the metaphor, they're going to be the Trojan horse inside NATO as well. So, as you correctly said, a media operation, which is what the Western powers have, and it's looking increasingly likely that, just as with the sanctions and with everything else, it's going to blow up in their faces.
Yeah, Turkey is going to be getting food, working with Russia to get food to the world. They're going to become a gas and energy hub. They've got a big trade deal with Russia as well. They're going to start to connect to the ruble,
yeah,
which is huge. And they have a few weak spots, which I think the U.S., as looking at all of this, I think the U.S. is going to try to hit them at. And I think the big weak spot, we can look at the Kurds. That may be a weak spot where the U.S. tries to hit them. And then you have their economy and inflation.
Right.
That's going to be something that the U.S. is going to try to exploit as well. And we can't forget that Bolton, I believe, actually has an entire NGO or think tank dedicated to regime change in Turkey. I mean, that is what his NGO or think tank does. It's dedicated to overthrowing Erdogan. So I'm sure that Bolton is going to be working overtime to figure out ways to overthrow Erdogan and bring Turkey on side, because that's the only thing that they have left. To get rid of Erdogan now. And I just want to say real quick, Erdogan still might vote yes. We don't know. He might vote yes to Finland.
Exactly. I mean, he's the kind of person.
But the damage has been done to Finland and Sweden. I mean, the damage has been done. This has been a terrible disaster for them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been an awful humiliation. And I would say every point you've made about the fact that Turkey has its weak points, its stress points, is absolutely true. But the window is not going to be indefinitely open to exploit them, because bear in mind this, I mean, it could be, I mean, I don't want to get into Erdogan's mind, but, his military operation in Syria against the Kurds may be connected with trying to preempt any American moves with the Kurds in Turkey. Who knows? Possible. But on the economic fronts, if the Turkish economy begins to integrate with Russia, which as we've now seen, a very strong currency indeed, and one that's going to continue to get stronger, I anticipate. And if he's able to somehow attach the lira to the ruble, then that could strengthen the Turkish currency in the long run as well. And of course, as the two financial systems integrate, you get an anchor on, or rather, if you like, a base under the lira, and that makes the whole inflation crisis in Turkey seem less dangerous for Erdogan than it is at the moment. So just bear that in mind. I mean, this will take a while for things to work out, but the window of opportunity that people like Bolton has may not be indefinitely open.
I agree. All right, we'll leave it there. TheDuran.locals.com, everybody, and go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code GOODDAY. Take care.